not want to stay, if he was going to be pummeled by the Democrats every week in hearings or that sort of thing. Now, what's interesting is how this news came to light around here. I would say within the last half hour, that's how closely held it was, we started getting phone calls from people around the Pentagon saying, something's up, the hallways smell different. That's a phrase around here. When you hear that the hallways smell different, that means something is going on, and it was within the last 15 minutes or so that senior military commanders in the building here were briefed on this, that this news would be coming, so it would not catch the uniformed military by surprise, of course. But I think at the end of the day, to some extent, this decision is as much the secretary's as the president's. Again, Don Rumsfeld a long time ago saying he could only stay if he felt he could be effective, and with these midterm election results, clearly the secretary today has come to a different view.
And no doubt the defense secretary has been truly the face of the U.S. war policy in Iraq, in Afghanistan as well. As you know, he's become the subject of critics worldwide for his policy there. And what's interesting is that analysts were saying he will not be forced out just because he faces a tougher time from Democrats owning the majority now. And this is interesting right after the elections and right after this talk about, hey, that pressure won't force him out, we're getting a resignation.
Well, it is interesting. I have to say some longtime Rumsfeld watchers didn't quite buy the line that he wouldn't go. I think that many people felt over the last couple of weeks it was a question of when, not if. I think the timing is very surprising. I leave it to people with a lot better political antenna than myself, but it does seem that the president and the administration clearly heard the message that this election was about Iraq, and they decided that if they were going to make a change, it was best to do it as quickly as possible. But what does it mean for the troops on the ground in Iraq? Perhaps not that much at the moment as we see the president come in. The troops are still on the front line.
Let's listen to the president, Barbara. Let's listen to the president.
Say, wow, the glum faces. Yesterday, people went to the polls, and they cast their vote for a new direction in the House of Representatives. And while the ballots are still being counted in the Senate, it is clear the Democrat Party had a good night last night. And I congratulate them on their victories. This morning, I spoke with Republican and Democrat leadership in the House and the Senate. I spoke with Republican leaders, Senator Frist and Senator McConnell and Speaker Hastert and John Boehner and Roy Blunt. I thanked them for their hard-fought contest. I appreciate the efforts they put in for our candidates. I'm obviously disappointed with the outcome of the election, and as the head of the Republican Party, I share a large part of the responsibility. I told my party's leaders that it is now our duty to put the elections behind us and work together with the Democrats and independents on the great issues facing this country. This morning I also spoke with the Democrats. I spoke with Senators Reid and Durbin. I congratulated them on running a strong campaign in the Senate. And I told them that regardless of the final outcome, we can work together over the next 2 years. I also congratulated Congresswoman Pelosi and Congressman Hoyer. They ran a disciplined campaign. Their candidates were well organized and did a superb job of turning out their votes. I told Congresswoman Pelosi that I look forward to working with her and her colleagues to find common ground in the next 2 years. As the majority party in the House of Representatives, they recognize that in their new role they now have greater responsibilities. And in my first act of bipartisan outreach since the election, I shared with her the names of some Republican interior decorators who can help her pick out the new drapes in her new offices. I believe that the leaders of both political parties must try to work through our differences. And I believe we will be able to work through differences. I've reassured the House and Senate leaders that I intend to work with the new Congress in a bipartisan way to address issues confronting this country. I invited them to come to the White House in the coming days to discuss the important work remaining this year and to begin conversations about the agenda for next year. The message yesterday was clear. The American people want their leaders in Washington to set aside partisan differences, conduct ourselves in an ethical manner, and work together to address the challenges facing our nation. We live in historic times. The challenges and opportunities are plain for all to see. Will this country continue to strengthen our economy today and over the long run? Will we provide a first-class education for our children? And will we be prepared for the global challenges of the 21st century? Will we build upon the recent progress we've made in addressing our energy dependence by aggressively pursuing new technologies to break our addiction to foreign sources of energy? And most importantly, will this generation of leaders meet our obligation to protect the American people? I know there's a lot of speculation on what the election means for the battle we're waging in Iraq. I recognize that many Americans voted last night to register their displeasure with the lack of progress being made there. Yet I also believe most Americans and leaders here in Washington from both political parties understand we cannot accept defeat. In the coming days and weeks, I and members of my national security team will meet with the members of both parties to brief them on latest developments and listen to their views about the way forward. We'll also provide briefings to the new members of Congress so they can be fully informed as they prepare for their new responsibilities. As we work with the new leaders in Congress, I'm also looking forward to hearing the views of the Bipartisan Iraq Study Group, co-chaired by Secretary James Baker and Congressman Lee Hamilton. This group is assessing the situation in Iraq and the group is expected to provide recommendations on a way forward. And I'm going to meet with them, I think, early next week. The election has changed many things in Washington, but it has not changed my fundamental responsibility, and that is to protect the American people from attack. As the Commander-in-Chief, I take these responsibilities seriously. And so does the man who served this nation honorably for almost 6 years as our Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. Now, after a series of thoughtful conversations, Secretary Rumsfeld and I agreed that the timing is right for new leadership at the Pentagon. Our military has experienced an enormous amount of change and reform during the last 5 years while fighting the war on terror, one of the most consequential wars in our nation's history. Don Rumsfeld has been a superb leader during a time of change. Yet he also appreciates the value of bringing in a fresh perspective during a critical period in this war. Don Rumsfeld is a patriot who served our country with honor and distinction. He is a trusted advisor and a friend, and I'm deeply grateful to his service to our country. I've asked Bob Gates to serve as the Secretary of Defense. Bob is a former director of the CIA and current president of Texas A&M University. If confirmed by the Senate, Bob will bring more than 25 years of national security experience and a stellar reputation as an effective leader with sound judgment. He served 6 presidents from both political parties and rose from an entry-level employee in the CIA to become the Director of Central Intelligence. During his service at the CIA and at the National Security Council, Bob Gates gained firsthand knowledge that will help him meet the challenges and opportunities our country faces during the next 2 years. He is serving as a member of the Baker-Hamilton Commission. He is a steady, solid leader who can help make the necessary adjustments in our approach to meet our current challenges. I will have more to say about Secretary Rumsfeld and Bob Gates later today here at the White House. Amid this time of change, I have a message for those on the front lines. To our enemies, do not be joyful. Do not confuse the workings of our democracies with a lack of will. Our nation is committed to bringing you to justice. Liberty and democracy are the source of America's strength, and liberty and democracy will lift up the hopes and desires of those you are trying to destroy. To the people of Iraq, do not be fearful. As you take the difficult steps toward democracy and peace, America is going to stand with you. We know you want a better way of life, and now is the time to seize it. To our brave men and women in uniform, don't be doubtful. America will always support you Our nation is blessed to have men and women who volunteer to serve and are willing to risk their own lives for the safety of our fellow citizens. When I first came to Washington nearly 6 years ago, I was hopeful I could help change the tone here in the Capitol. As governor of Texas, I had successfully worked with both Democrats and Republicans to find common sense solutions to the problems facing our state. While we made some progress on changing the tone, I'm disappointed we haven't made more. I'm confident that we can work together. I'm confident we can overcome the temptation to divide this country between red and blue. The issues before us are bigger than that, and we are bigger than that. By putting this election and partisanship behind us, we can launch a new era of cooperation and make these next 2 years productive ones for the American people. Appreciate your interest. Now I'll answer some questions. Terry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the departure of Don Rumsfeld signal a new direction in Iraq? A solid majority of Americans said yesterday that they wanted some American troops, if not all, withdrawn from Iraq. Did you hear that call, and will you heed it?
Terry, I'd like our troops to come home too, but I want them to come home with victory, and that is a country that can govern itself, sustain itself, and defend itself. And I can understand Americans saying come home, but I don't know if they said come home and leave behind an Iraq that could end up being a safe haven for al-Qaeda. I don't believe they said that. And so I'm committed to victory. I'm committed to helping this country so that we can come home. Now, first part about new direction. Well, there's certainly going to be new leadership at the Pentagon, and as I mentioned in my comments, that Secretary Rumsfeld and I agreed that sometimes it's necessary to have a fresh perspective. And Bob Gates will bring a fresh perspective. He'll also bring great managerial experience. And he is, I had a good talk with him on Sunday in Crawford. It took me a while to be able to sit down and visit with him, and I did. And I found him to be of like mind. He understands we're in a global war against these terrorists. He understands that defeat is not an option in Iraq. And I believe it's important that there be a fresh perspective, and so does Secretary Rumsfeld. Steve.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week you told us that Secretary Rumsfeld will be staying on. Why is the timing right now for this, and how much does it have to do with the election results?
Right. No, yeah, you and Hunt and Kyle came in the Oval Office, and Hunt asked me the question 1 week before the campaign, and basically is, you're going to do something about Rumsfeld and the vice president? And my answer was, they're going to stay on. And the reason why is I didn't want to inject a major decision about this war in the final days of a campaign. And so the only way to answer that question and to get you on to another question was to give you that answer. The truth of the matter is as well, that's one reason I gave the answer, but the other reason why is I hadn't had a chance to visit with Bob Gates yet, and I hadn't had my final conversation with Don Rumsfeld yet at that point. I had been talking with Don Rumsfeld over a period of time about fresh perspective. He likes to call it fresh eyes. He himself understands that Iraq is not working well enough, fast enough. And he and I are constantly assessing, and I'm assessing as well all the time by myself about, do we have the right people in the right place? Are we got the right strategy? As you know, we're constantly changing tactics, and that requires constant assessment. And so he and I both agreed in our meeting yesterday that it was appropriate that I accept his resignation. And so the decision was made. Actually, I thought we were going to do fine yesterday. Shows what I know. But I thought we were going to be fine in the election. My point to you is that win or lose, Bob Gates was going to become the nominee. Let's see here. Brett.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said you're interested in changing the tone and committed to changing the tone in Washington. Just a few days before this election in Texas, you said that Democrats, no matter how they put it, their approach to Iraq comes down to terrorists win, America loses. What has changed today, number one? Number two, is this administration prepared to deal with the level of oversight and investigation that is possibly going to come from one chamber or two in Congress?
What's changed today is the election's over, and the Democrats won. And now we're going to work together for 2 years to accomplish big objectives for the country. And secondly, the Democrats are going to have to make up their mind about how they're going to conduct their affairs. And I haven't had a chance to talk with the leadership yet about these issues. But we'll begin consultations with the Democrat leadership starting Thursday and Friday. David.
Thank you. You acknowledge that this is a message election on the war in Iraq. And so the American public today, having voted, will want to know what you mean in terms of course correction on Iraq, and particularly in light of this fact that last week the Vice President pointed out that you and he aren't running for anything anymore and that it's, quote, full speed ahead on Iraq. So which is it? Are you listening to the voters or are you listening to the Vice President, and what does that mean?
David, I believe Iraq had a lot to do with the election, but I believe there's other factors as well. People want their congressmen to be honest and ethical. So in some races, that was the primary factor. There were different factors that determined the outcome of different races, but no question Iraq was on people's minds. And as you have just learned, I am making a change at the Secretary of Defense to bring a fresh perspective as to how to achieve something I think most Americans want, which is a victory. We will work with members of Congress. We will work with the Baker-Hamilton Commission. My point is that while we have been adjusting, we will continue to adjust to achieve the objective. And I believe that's what the American people want. Somehow it seeped in their conscience that, my attitude was just simply stay the course. Stay the course means let's get the job done, but it doesn't mean, staying stuck on a strategy or tactics that may not be working. So perhaps I need to do a better job of explaining that we're constantly adjusting. And so this fresh perspective, so what the American people hear today is we're constantly looking for a fresh perspective. But what is also important for the American people to understand is that if we were to leave before the job is done, the country becomes more at risk. That's what the Vice President is saying. He said, if the job is not complete, Al-Qaeda will have safe haven for which to launch attacks. These radicals and extremists have made it clear they want to topple moderate governments to spread their ideology. They believe that it's just a matter of time before we leave so they can implement their strategies. We're just not going to let them do that. We're going to help this government become a government that can defend, govern, and sustain itself, and an ally in the war on terror. Yes, sir.
Your message today is
yes.
not full speed ahead. Is that right?
We got another man with the mic, David, please.
Mr. President, thank you. Can I just start by asking you to clarify, sir, if in your meeting with Steve and Terry and Dick, did you know at that point
I did not.
You would be making a change on Secretary Rumsfeld?
No, I did not. And the reason I didn't know is because I hadn't visited with his replacement, or potential replacement.
But you knew he would be leaving, just not who would replace him?
No, I didn't know that at the time.
Okay. May I ask you about Nancy Pelosi?
The other thing I did know as well is that that kind of question, a wise question by a seasoned reporter, is the kind of thing that causes one to either inject major military decisions at the end of a campaign or not. And I had made the decision that I wasn't going to be talking about, hypothetical troop levels or changes in command structure coming down the stretch. And I'll tell you why I made that decision. I made that decision because I think it sends a bad signal to our troops that they think the commander-in-chief is constantly adjusting tactics and decisions based upon politics. And I think it's important in a time of war that to the extent possible we leave politics out of the major decisions being made. And it was the right decision to make, by the way. And secondly, I hadn't visited with Bob Gates. I told you I visited with him last Sunday in Crawford. You can't replace somebody until you know you got somebody to replace him with. And finally, I hadn't had my last conversation with Secretary Rumsfeld, which I had yesterday.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask you, Nancy Pelosi has been quite clear about her agenda for the first 100 hours. She mentions things like raising minimum wage, cutting interest rates on student loans, broadening stem cell research, and rolling back tax cuts. Which of those can you support, sir?
No, I knew you'd probably try to get me to start negotiating with myself. I haven't even visited with Congresswoman Pelosi yet. She's coming to the Oval Office later this week. I'm going to sit down and talk with her. I believe on a lot of issues we can find common ground. And there's a significant difference between common ground and an abandoning principle. She's not going to abandon her principles, and I'm not going to abandon mine. But I do believe we have an opportunity to find some common ground to move forward on. In that very same interview you quoted, one of these three characters asked me about minimum wage. I said there's an area where I believe we can find common ground. And as we do, I'll be, of course, making sure that our small businesses are, there's compensation for the small businesses in the bill. Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. President. In our discussion with you last week, which you've referenced here several times.
Are you bringing this up so everybody else gets kind of jealous?
Certainly.
Like Gregory,
certainly.
for example.
This is a very competitive environment we're in here. No, but we asked you about the fate of Secretary Rumsfeld and Vice President Cheney. Vice President Cheney, of course, takes many of the same positions that Secretary Rumsfeld did on the war. Does he still have your complete confidence?
Yes, he
and
does.
Do you expect him to stay to the
campaign
end of
is
your
over.
term?
Yes, he does.
And he'll be here for the remainder
Yes,
of
he
your
will.
term?
Thank you. Suzanne.
Thank you, Mr. President. With all due respect, Nancy Pelosi has called you incompetent, a liar, the emperor with no clothes, and as recently as yesterday, dangerous. How will you work with someone who has such little respect for your leadership and who is third in line to the presidency?
Suzanne, I've been around politics a long time. I understand when campaigns end, and I know when governing begins. And I'm going to work with people of both parties. You know, look, people say unfortunate things at times, but if you hold grudges in this line of work, you're never going to get anything done. And my intention is to get some things done. And as I said, I'm going to start visiting with her on Friday, with the idea of coming together. I mean, look, this is a close election. If you look at race by race, it was close. The cumulative effect, however, was not too close. It was a thumping. But nevertheless, the people expect us to work together. That's what they expect. And as I said in my opening comments, you know, there comes responsibility with victory. And that's what Nancy Pelosi told me this morning. She said in the phone call, she wants to work together, and so do I. And so that's how you deal with it. This isn't, as we said, this isn't my first rodeo. In other words, this is not the first time I've been in a campaign where people have expressed themselves, and in different kinds of ways. But I have learned that, you know, if you focus on the big picture, which in this case is our nation, and issues we need to work together on, you can get stuff done. For example, the No Child Left Behind Act is going to come up for reauthorization. There's an area where we must work together for the sake of our children and for the sake of a competitive America. And I believe we can get a lot done. And I know it's the spirit of the new leadership to try to get a lot done, and I look forward to talking to him about it. Rutenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. You just described the election results as a thumping.
I said the cumulative, let's make sure. Who do you write for?
The New York Times,
oh, yeah, that's right,
Mr.
yeah.
President.
Let's make sure we get it. The facts. I said that the elections were close. The cumulative effect.
It's a thumping.
Thumping.
And but the results have been
Polite way of saying, you know. Anyway, go ahead.
But the results are being interpreted as a repudiation of your leadership style in some quarters. I wonder what your reaction is to that, and should we expect a very different White House? Should we expect a very different leadership style from you in these last 2 years, given that you have a whole new set of partners?
You know, I really haven't. I'm still going to try to speak plainly about what I think are the important priorities of the country, and winning this war on terror is by far the most important priority. And making sure this economy continues to grow is an important priority, and making sure our children have a good education is an important priority. Obviously, there's a shift in the Congress, and therefore, in order to get legislation passed, we got to work with the Democrats. They're the ones who control the committees. They're the ones who will decide how the bills flow. And so you'll see a lot of meetings with Democrats and a lot of discussions with Democrats. And in terms of the election, no question Iraq had something to do with it. And it's tough in a time of war when people see carnage on their television screens. The amazing thing about this election, and which surprised me somewhat, which goes to show I should not try punditry, is that this economy is strong. And a lot of times off years are decided by the economy. And yet, obviously there was a different feel out there for the electorate. The economy, the good news in the economy was overwhelmed by the toughness of this fight and toughness of the war. And so, Jim, look, I understand people didn't agree with some of my decisions. I'm going to continue making decisions based upon what I think is right for the country. I've never been one to try to fashion, the principles I believe or the decisions I make based upon, trying to kind of short-term popularity. I do understand where the the heart of the people. I understand they're frustrated. I am too, as I said the other day. I wish this had gone faster. So does Secretary Rumsfeld. But the reality is that it's a tough fight, and we're going to win the fight. And I truly believe the only way we won't win it is if we leave before the job is done. Yeah, Jim.
Thanks.
Terrible, terrible principle. I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
I'm nuts? You think my sensibilities left me as a result of working hard on the campaign trail, Gregory? Yeah, I was.
But to follow, we were speaking about the war, and during the campaign, two very different viewpoints of the war came out. You spoke a lot, as Brett mentioned, about what you saw as a Democratic approach to the war, which you were greatly concerned about. Are you worried that you won't be able to work with the Democrats, or do you feel like you have to prevail upon them, your viewpoint?
Well, I think we're going to have to work with them, but just like I think we're going to have to work with the Baker-Hamilton Commission. It's very important that the people understand the consequences of failure. I have vowed to the country that, we're not going to fail. We're not going to leave before the job is done. And obviously we got a lot of work to do with some members of Congress. I don't know how many members of Congress said get out right now. I mean, the candidates running for Congress and the Senate, I haven't seen that chart. Some of the comments I read where they said, well, look, we just need a different approach to make sure we succeed. Well, you can find common ground there. See, if the goal is success, then we can work together. If the goal is get out now, regardless, then that's going to be hard to work together. But I believe the Democrats want to work together to win this aspect of the war on terror. I'm also looking forward to working with them to make sure that we institutionalize to the extent possible steps necessary to make sure future presidents are capable of waging this war. Because Iraq is a part of the war on terror. And it's, I think back to Harry Truman and Dwight Eisenhower. I mean, Harry Truman began the Cold War, and Eisenhower, obviously from a different party, continued it. And I would hope that would be the spirit that we're able to work together. We may not agree with every tactic, but we should agree that this country needs to secure ourselves against an enemy that would like to strike us again. This enemy is not going away after my presidency. And I look forward to working with them. And I truly believe that Congresswoman Pelosi and Harry Reid care just about as much, they care about the security of this country like I do. They see that no leader in Washington is going to walk away from protecting the country. We have different views on how to do that, but their spirit is such that they want to protect America. That's what I believe. Just like I talked about the troops. I meant what I said. Look, the people are just going to be looking at this election. The enemy's going to say, well, it must mean America is going to leave. And the answer is no, that doesn't what it means. Our troops are wondering whether or not they're going to get the support they need after this election. Democrats are going to support our troops just like Republicans will. And the Iraqis have got to understand this election, as I said, don't be fearful. In other words, don't look at the results of the election and say, oh no, America is going to leave us before the job is complete. That's not what's going to happen, Jim. Yes, sir. Fletcher.
Thank you, sir. There's a bill that could come before the lame duck session of Congress that would extend voting rights to the District of Columbia in Congress and also give an extra seat to Utah. You've been passionate about democracy in Iraq. Why not here in D.C., and would you support this bill?
Yeah, it's the first I've heard of it. I didn't know it's going to come up from the lame duck. I think, yeah, well, it may or may not come up. I'm trying to get the Indian deal done, the Vietnam deal done, and the budget's done. But I'll take a look at it. First I've heard of it. Thanks. Let's see here. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the prospect that your successor would be dealing with the war. You'll be making your first trip to Vietnam in roughly a week. Some people are looking at the war as another Vietnam War. Are they wrong to do so, and if so, why?
I think they are. I think they are. First of all, Iraq is, after the overthrow of the tyrant, voted on a constitution that is intended to unite the whole country. And then they had elections under that constitution where nearly 12 million people voted for this unity government. Secondly, which is different from Vietnam. Secondly, in terms of our troops, this is a volunteer army. Vietnam wasn't a volunteer army, as you know. And in this volunteer army, the troops understand the consequences of Iraq and the global war on terror. That's why re-enlistment rates are up. And that's why enlistment is high. Thirdly, the support for our troops is strong here in the United States, and it wasn't during the Vietnam era. So I see differences, I really do. And, you know, you hear all the time, well, this is maybe a civil war. Well, I don't believe it is, and the Maliki government doesn't believe it is. All our ambassador doesn't believe it is, but we've got to make sure it isn't by implementing a strategy which helps, a political strategy which helps unify the country, and a security strategy which makes sure that the Iraqis are better capable of fighting off the extremists and the radicals that want to stop progress in Iraq. So I don't think it is a parallel. Mike.
Thank you, sir. During this campaign season, some religious conservatives expressed support and appreciation for the work you've done. But some also expressed that they felt like they've expended a lot of effort on your behalf without a lot of results. I wonder if you could tell us what parts of their agenda are still on your radar screen, and if you think they're right to be frustrated. And also, Mr. President, I ask you if you have any metrics you'd be willing to share about your reading contest with Mr. Rove.
I'm losing. I obviously was working harder in the campaign than he was. He's a faster reader. You know, Michael, I must confess I cannot catalog for you in detail the different criticisms. In this line of work, you get criticized from all sides. And that's okay. It's just part of the job. And so I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, but I can tell you that I believe the faith-based and community-based initiative is a vital part of helping solve intractable problems here in America. And I would hope that I could work with Congress to make sure this program, which has been invigorated, remains invigorated. And the reason why I believe in it so much is that there are just some problems that require something other than government help. And it requires people who have heard a call to help somebody in need. And I believe we ought to open up grants to competitive biddings for these types of organizations, and we have done that. And it's very important that that program stay strong. But, you know, Michael, you're probably following all these, the different lists of concerns people have with my presidency, and I respect that. Frankly, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about in this question. I'm sure there's some people who aren't perfectly content, but there are some people who aren't perfectly content from different parties and different philosophies. All I know to do is to make decisions based upon principles that I believe are important, and now work with Democrat leaders in the Congress because they control the committees and they control the flow of bills, and I'm going to do that for the good of the country. Let's see here. Yeah, McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you had any do-overs to do in
You don't
this
get
race,
to do them. Sorry.
if Mr. Rove had any do-overs to do in his.
You don't get do-overs. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, what would they be? I mean, are there any tactical?
Look, yeah, well, I frankly haven't analyzed the election nearly as much as some of you have. Again, I think when you really look close at the results, first of all, there's a lot of close elections. No question Iraq had an impact, but it's hard to win an election when you're trying to win a write-in campaign in our state of Texas. I mean, you could have the greatest positions in the world on issues and be the most articulate person on an issue, but to try to win on a write-in is really hard to do. We had, the race in Florida, the Foley seat. That's a hard race to win, in a Republican district, because people couldn't vote directly for the Republican candidate. And all I'm telling you, John, is that when you dig into the races, look, I had to go down to Houston and Sugar Land and act as the Secretary of State. Take your pencil into the box and then write it in. And the reason I bring that up is that, I'm not sure Iraq had much to do with the outcome of that election. Now, it certainly did in other places. One of the interesting observations I had from last night was that if you take a look at New York State, Senator Clinton ran a very strong race, but she ran a race that appeared to me to be on just a Senate race. She wanted to show people she had the capacity to help others win. And the same thing happened in Pennsylvania with Governor Rendell. He ran a very strong race, as did Senator-elect Casey. And my only point to you is that I'm sure Iraq had something to do with the voters' mind, but so did a very strong turnout mechanism in those two important states. So they're just going to have to analyze all the different results. As far as do-overs, talk to them. Ann.
Americans have heard it before. There's going to be cooperation. We're going to get along. What can you do to show Americans that you'll stop and avoid any gridlock, because they've seen it come anyway?
Well, we had some pretty good success early on in this administration. We got the No Child Left Behind Act passed, which was an important piece of bipartisan legislation. We got some tax cuts passed with Democrat votes. I'm anxious, but anyway. So we just now got to show people we're capable of doing it. I mean, you're right. I mean, there's people are skeptical, and the way you defeat skepticism is perform. And I was very pleased with my conversation with Congresswoman Pelosi. It was a very gracious conversation, and albeit a little early in the morning, I must confess, but nevertheless, it was a good one, and my fault since I was the person who initiated the call. But I do believe we can get some things done. I think we can set an agenda, and I hope so. I hope so. I didn't come to Washington just to occupy the office. I came to get some positive things done on behalf of the country, and there are some big issues we got to deal with. No Child Left Behind is one. Entitlements. That's going to be an interesting issue to try to deal with. And it's going to be very important in entitlements for people to feel comfortable about bringing ideas to the table, and people being Republicans and Democrats. If we do not have Republicans and Democrats at the table for entitlements, nothing is going to happen. And therefore, I've instructed Secretary Paulson to reach out to folks on the Hill to see if we can't at least get a dialogue started that will enable us, hopefully, to move forward on a very important issue that will affect this country for a long time if we don't solve it, and that is the unfunded liabilities inherent in these entitlement programs. We need to continue to talk about energy. Dependency upon foreign oil is a national security and economic security problem, and it's a problem that requires bipartisan cooperation. I know the Democrats are concerned about this issue, as am I. So in other words, there's areas where I believe we can get some important things done. And to answer your question, though, how do we convince Americans that we're able to do it? Do it. That's how you do it. You get something done. You actually sit down, work together, and I sign legislation that we all agree on. And my pledge today is I'll work hard to try to see if we can't get that done. Herman.
wanted to ask you about the thumping you took at yesterday's rodeo. You said you were disappointed, you were surprised.
See, there you go.
You said you were...
Rudenberg, you notice that? Taking one...
And that was thumping without a G, correct? I just want to make sure we have it right for the transcript. You said you were surprised, you didn't see it coming, you were disappointed in the outcome. Does that indicate that after 6 years in the Oval Office, you're out of touch with America for something like this kind of wave to come and you not expect it?
No,
and on a semi-related note, does Nancy Pelosi look much like Bob Bullock to you?
It's an inside joke. I'm not commenting on it. Secondly, I'm an optimistic person. That's what I am. And I knew we were going to lose seats. I just didn't know how many.
How could you not know that and not be out of touch?
You didn't know it either.
A lot of polls showed it.
Well, there was I read those same polls, and I believe that I thought when it was all said and done, the American people would understand the importance of taxes and the importance of security. But people have spoken, and now it's time for us to move on. Kim.
Mr. President, you mentioned entitlements, and one of the big hot-button issues for the Democratic Party is Social Security and the idea of partial privatization, which you have talked about. And I wonder if there's anything in your agenda in that way that you're willing to adjust in the spirit of bipartisanship or back off from, given how important that is to the core of the Democratic Party.
I told Hank Paulson to tell the members that we'd sit down and we'd listen to everybody's ideas. I put out my ideas, as you recall, I think in the State of the Union last time, and we want to hear their ideas. And hopefully out of this concept of folks sitting around a table sharing ways forward, that we will come up with commonality that we're able to then say to the American people, we've helped solve this problem. But it's a tough issue. Look, I fully understand how hard it is. Social Security is, people are generally risk adverse when it comes time to Social Security. My problem with that is that the longer you wait, the more difficult the issue is going to become. And so I'm going to keep pushing it. And hopefully, we can get something done. Richard.
A little earlier you said that you truly believe that the Democratic leaders care about the security of this country as much as you do. Yet just about at every campaign stop you expressed pretty much the opposite. You talked about them having a different mindset.
I did.
About having a different philosophy, about waiting, being happy that America gets attacked before responding.
No, what did you just say? Happy?
You said they would be satisfied to see America
No,
get
I didn't say
attacked.
happy. Let's make sure.
You left that impression. Forgive me.
Well, with you. Go ahead.
Well, I'm wondering, looking back at the campaign and previous campaigns, do you think that it's been harder to pull the country together after the election by making such partisan attacks about national security?
Richard, I do believe they care about the security. I thought they were wrong not making sure our professionals had the tools. And I still believe that. I don't see how you can protect the country unless you give these professionals tools. They just have a different point of view. That doesn't mean they don't want America to get attacked. That's why I said what I said. Yeah, Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. On immigration, many Democrats had more positive things to say about your comprehensive proposal than many Republicans did. Do you think a Democratic Congress gives you a better shot at comprehensive immigration reform?
I should have brought this up. I do. I think we have a good chance. And thank you. It's an important issue, and I hope we can get something done on it. I meant to put that in my list of things that we need to get done. I would hope Republicans have recognized that we've taken very strong security measures to address one aspect of comprehensive immigration reform. And I was talking to Secretary Chertoff today. He thinks that these measures we're taking are beginning to have measurable effects, and that catch and release has virtually been ended over the last couple of months. And that's positive, and that's what some members were concerned about prior to advancing a comprehensive bill. Whereas they said, show me progress on the border, and then we'd be interested in talking about other aspects. Well, there is progress being made on the border in terms of security, and I would hope we can get something done. It's a vital issue. It's an issue that, there's an issue where I believe we can find some common ground with the Democrats.
What are the odds for a guest worker provision?
Well, that's got to be an integral part of a comprehensive plan. When you're talking comprehensive immigration reform, one part of it is a guest worker program where people can come on a temporary basis to do jobs Americans are not doing. I've always felt like that's be an important aspect of securing the border. Remember, if somebody's not trying to sneak in the first place, it makes decreases the workload on our Border Patrol and lets the Border Patrol focus on drugs and guns and terrorists. And but that's, I appreciate you bringing that up. I should have remembered it. Listen, thank you all very much for your time. Appreciate your interest.
President of the United States responding publicly for the first time with reporters about the resignation of his Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. When everything went forward with the elections, the headlines were reading that even though the Democrats were winning the majority, that analysts felt that that alone would not drive Rumsfeld out of office. Within the past hour, when we got the word, as you can imagine, the rumbling that went through the newsroom and the surprise that took place when we got the word that indeed the Secretary of Defense had resigned. The President saying a number of things that he feels it is ready for. He feels it is ready for a fresh perspective for victory in Iraq. He says that the tactics, you should never be stuck on certain tactics that aren't working. And that he is hoping that this change in this position will help this country move forward and make a difference with regard to the Iraq policy. He also announced the man who will replace Donald Rumsfeld, Dr. Robert Michael Gates, served as Director of Central Intelligence from 1991 to 1993, had a 26-year career in the CIA and the National Security Council. He is currently the president of Texas A&M University. John King joining us now to talk more about this next man who will take to the helm. John King, he's got quite a job on his hands.
He does have quite a job on his hand, Kira. It is a challenge for Mr. Gates. It is a challenge for the President of the United States as well, and it is a reminder, a reflection, the clearest evidence yet of the new political environment we find ourselves in. Secretary Rumsfeld's resignation was a key demand of the Democrats, but it was about to be a much more vocal demand of the Republicans, which is why, and you heard Mr. Bush acknowledge that at the news conference, he was thinking about this even before he learned yesterday that the Democrats at a minimum would take power in the House of Representatives, and they have a pretty good chance still. It's about a 50-49 split, I think, at the moment, but they're still in play to take control of the United States Senate as well. Mr. Gates will inherit the Pentagon at a time. Even people in the administration acknowledge the strategy in Iraq is struggling at best when there are calls from some Republicans like John McCain to send in more troops, calls from other Republicans and many, many Democrats to start having a plan to bring the troops home. In a way, Kira, this is back to the future for the President, if you will. He brought his own team to Washington. Many have always asked, how much does he talk to his father? How much does he rely on the old Bush one team for advice? Mr. Gates served his father on the National Security Council in the White House. He was the dean of the George Bush School of Government down in Texas. He's currently the president of Texas A&M University. He is someone who, as a CIA director, was obviously close to the former President Bush, and he is a good friend of former Secretary of State James Baker, who is about to present the president, we are told, with a report on his observations in Iraq that is quite damning of the strategy there. So Mr. Bush reaching back to his father's administration, to somebody he trusts, somebody he knows quite well, and somebody who will inherit now a monumental task, trying to, as the President just insisted again, yes, there was an election yesterday, but he's the Commander-in-Chief. He is not going to pull U.S. troops out of Iraq until he thinks the job is done. Democrats will be in his face on that point. Some Republicans have serious questions about this strategy. Mr. Gates has a huge job awaiting him.
John King, once again, though, the President of the United States reaching into that family pocket and selecting somebody that has a connection to his father, to his family, has a history. Is that the right way to go at this juncture? He could receive a lot of criticism for that, considering where he stands right now with his foreign policy.
There are many who say they wish he would listen to his father's team more often and more frequently over the past 6 years. Instead, he has listened more to his vice president and his Secretary of Defense. Colin Powell, of course, his first Secretary of State, came from the former Bush administration, and many would say the president would have been better served if he'd listened to Colin Powell more. In going back to his father's team, though, it's quite interesting because Secretary Baker is now involved. Mr. Gates is someone who has the respect of many of the former Bush administrations and former Republican administration officials who have been most critical of this Bush administration for not doing more to change the strategy in Iraq. And he also has, this is based on my memory, Kira, which we know is failing in my old age, but pretty good relationships with Democrats on Capitol Hill. He is not known as an ideologue. He's someone who came up through the ranks of the CIA. He's not a political appointee. I'm sure there are some Democrats who disagree with this decision or that decision, but he carried over into the Clinton administration when the former Bush administration expired, and my memory is that he has pretty good relationships with Democrats on Capitol Hill. And where the big question will be, will he be confirmed in a lame duck Congress? Will they move that quickly to do that while the Republicans still control the Senate? Will this carry over into January? But I know of nothing from his years in Washington that would have people thinking, while they will have tough questions about the administration's strategy and what will come next after Secretary Rumsfeld steps aside, I don't know of anything in Mr. Gates' background which would raise any flags at all, if you will, that the Senate, whether it is under Republican control or Democratic control, would not move as quickly as possible to confirm him as the new defense secretary.
John King will be talking more about the new defense secretary and also the elections from yesterday and the results. Thanks so much.
Kira and John, we have more breaking news here in the CNN newsroom, which will decide how our government is going to be run over the next coming years. This just in, CNN projects Democrat John Tester is the winner in the Montana Senate race. Montana's Secretary of State has not officially declared a winner, but reports that Tester leads by more than 3,000 votes. There's one precinct still outstanding with a maximum of 500 votes and 1,000 provisional ballots. Tester's win brings the Senate balance of power to 50 for the Democrats, and that's 49 for the Republicans. The only state that still hangs in the balance is, of course, Virginia, where Democratic challenger Jim Webb has a slim edge over Republican incumbent George Allen. If Democrats win in Virginia, they'll be in charge of the Senate. If not, a 50-50 split would favor Republicans, since Dick Cheney, as the vice president, breaks all those ties. Let's move on and talk about all of this. A big night for the Democrat means big changes on Capitol Hill. Among the Dems now in line to chair a House committee is Charles Rangel of New York, and he joins us from there. First of all, Mr. Rangel, welcome, and thank you for joining us. What do you make of this resignation of Donald Rumsfeld?
I think symbolically it makes a lot of us feel more comfortable because we knew where Donald Rumsfeld was coming from. But I don't think the president made it too clear as to whether or not he was staying the course or what the new CIA secretary is going to bring to us in getting us out of Iraq.
There are those who say, of course, you are the person who will control the purse strings. What does that mean for Iraq? Does that mean a removal of troops? Does that mean less money? What does it mean?
Actually, I am not the person that controls the purse string.
As far as taxes go and as far as spending?
No.
Right.
The spending comes from the Appropriations Committee, but I understand the thrust of your question, and believe me, no member of Congress, Democrat or Republican, would cut any funds that would put our troops in harm's way. I think more than anything else, it's the vote that took place yesterday that should send a message to the president. No president can possibly succeed in furthering a war if he doesn't have the support of the American people. This goes beyond funding.
A Democratic House, a Republican White House, how will that affect, if at all, anything? Obviously it will, the way things happen on the Hill.
Well, the answer to that is in the president's hands. We Democrats only have 2 years to give some assurances to the voter that they made the right decision. So we can't come up with democratic solutions. We have to work with the Republicans, and I'm hopeful that we will create a bipartisan atmosphere that the whole Congress can feel proud. Of course, at the end of the day, it's what the president does on Social Security, on Medicare, on tax simplifications. And if he doesn't stay the course as relates to privatization, I look forward to working with him on all of these important issues.
We're talking about raising taxes, and just days before the election, you and Dick Cheney talked about this. You had I think was very critical of it. Dick Cheney said that that you would raise taxes and destroy the economy if Democrats would take control of the House. What happened with that, and what's your response to that now?
Dick Cheney has nothing to do with Ways and Means or the economy. Every time I've seen him on television, he's always talking about the war and not the economy. What they're pressing for is for someone to say that the tax cuts that the president has put in for the very wealthy, they expire in 2010, and they want some type of assurance that Democrats will allow this to continue. I think it's irresponsible for any member of Congress especially on the Ways and Means Committee, to say what the economy is going to look like in 2010 and promise a continuation of that law. There's a lot that has to be done before then, and what happens with the war, to a large extent, will determine our resources.
Yeah, let's get back to the war and talk about the war. Of course, Donald Rumsfeld resigning, and you've been talking about that Democrats have been saying there needed to be a change in the course of the war. The president mentioned stay the course, even saying that maybe I should have explained myself better when I meant stay the course. What does this mean? Does this mean a true pullout? What exactly, how are you going to change what's happening with Iraq, the Democrats' plan, as far as
I think the first thing you have to do is admit that you made one big mistake, to reach out to our friends in the area, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, to ask our European friends in NATO that collectively we should be coming up with some plan to turn the administration and the governorship of that area to the people in that region. Americans are the last people in the world to be teaching somebody how to get along culturally. We have own problems in this country. So I think we're pretty unified in saying staying the course is not working. It's not up to Democrats or members of Congress to say what is going to work. We got a new Secretary of Defense. Once you admit that what we're doing is not working, then we have to find some way to keep our young people out of harm's way. Once that decision is made, believe me, it's easy to find out how we execute it.
Congressman Charles Rangel of New York, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Word of Rumsfeld's resignation has reached Iraq. Let's get straight to CNN's John Roberts. He's in Baghdad. He's embedded with the 172nd Stryker Brigade. He joins us now by the phone. John, what's the reaction from the troops?
Hey, Kara. I was going in to talk with one of the commanders here at the base that I'm stationed at about the Rumsfeld resignation. And went into his office, and he was watching the press conference on CNN Pipeline. So the news travels fast around here. Of course, none of the military personnel, none of the active duty at least, want to talk about this on camera. They say it's not their job. It's not the right thing for them to be questioning the leadership or even commenting on it. But off camera, they've got some pretty interesting things to say. First of all, it came as quite a shock to everybody there. As I walked into this tactical operations center, they were all, buzzing about it, saying this comes as quite a surprise. The timing of it is very unusual. I want to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, though. They seem to think that it was a good idea because they were saying that with all of the hits that Rumsfeld has taken from retired military officers who have come out publicly saying it's time for him to go, or as Major General Paul Eaton did, wrote that scathing editorial in the New York Times, that he was becoming a bit of a distraction to the military, and particularly to the operations here in Iraq. And then they told me that bringing in some new blood at this particular point, which they see as a critical juncture in the war for Iraq, was probably a good idea. An intelligence officer I was talking about Robert Gates coming in as the new Secretary of Defense, saying he seems like a really good guy, an intelligence background, also an academic, the head of A&M University. So they seem to be positive here in the field as to this change, although, as they said, it did come to them as quite a surprise.
Our John Roberts embedded there with the U.S. Army, the 102nd Stryker Brigade. We'll continue checking with John, get reaction from Iraqis and also U.S. troops on the front lines. The president, when talking about the resignation of the Secretary of Defense, said that he did have a message to the military then on the front lines, and also to the people of Iraq, and that is not to be fearful. He also had a message straight to the enemy, as he said, don't be joyful, you all will be brought to justice. We're going to have more on this developing news. Congressman John Murtha, a strong critic of the war in Iraq, joins me live. We'll be right back.
At eHarmony, you don't search for a match. We bring highly compatible matches to you based on 29 proven dimensions of compatibility. Log on to eHarmony.com and get your personality profile, a $50 value, free.
Call
today for the Gold Delta Sky Miles credit card from American Express and start earning double miles in more places more often. Apply now and get 17,500 bonus miles right away. With award tickets starting at just 25,000 miles, you can fly free sooner. Plus, the card is fee-free the first year. Call 1-800-SKY-MILES. Call now for the Gold Delta Sky Miles credit card and earn 2 miles for every eligible dollar you spend for even faster travel awards on Delta and 18 airline partners. Take advantage of this great offer today and get 17,500 miles closer to a free trip. Plus, enjoy the card fee-free the first year. Call 1-800-SKY-MILES now.
When something really fits, you can feel it, like the fit you get with C-Bond denture adhesive. It's the only wafer that has a gasket effect that locks dentures in place. Only C-Bond gives you all-over coverage, all-over hold in a wafer. No mess, no ooze.
When your dentures really fit, you can feel it.
Now, lock dentures in place with C-Bond, the adhesive wafer with the gasket fit. C-Bond.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Don Lemon here with Kira Phillips in the CNN World Headquarters in Atlanta. The GOP stumbles and the Pentagon rumbles. The bottom line, Donald Rumsfeld is out as Secretary of State of Defense.
Now, after a series of thoughtful conversations, Secretary Rumsfeld and I agreed that the timing is right for new leadership at the Pentagon.
The president dropped this bombshell a day after his Capitol Hill advantage cratered. The GOP lost its House majority in a big way, and the Senate's still a question mark. In truth, Mr. Bush said the Rumsfeld decision has been in the works for a while, despite repeated and adamant promises that Rumsfeld was staying on.
I didn't want to inject a major decision about this war in the final days of a campaign.
And Mr. Bush also took pains to clarify what has clearly been a painful decision.
To our enemies, do not be joyful. Do not confuse the workings of our democracies with a lack of will. Our nation is committed to bringing you to justice. Liberty and democracy are the source of America's strength, and liberty and democracy will lift up the hopes and desires of those you are trying to destroy. To the people of Iraq, do not be fearful. As you take the difficult steps toward democracy and peace, America is going to stand with you. We know you want a better way of life, and now is the time to seize it. To our brave men and women in uniform, don't be doubtful. America will always support you.
And reaction now from the Pentagon. Let's head to Pentagon correspondent Jamie McIntyre. Jamie, reaction from there.
Well, Don, I can tell you that this came as a bit of a surprise here at the Pentagon, considering the misdirection that President Bush gave last week when he indicated that he expected Donald Rumsfeld to stay to the end of his administration. The president admitting today that during the last week he had been reconsidering the tenure of Donald Rumsfeld, and it actually had come to the decision before yesterday's election results were clear that Donald Rumsfeld would be replaced, in his words, one way or another. That Bob Gates would replace him, the former CIA director. I can tell you that most of the people at the Pentagon found out the news this morning as they came into work during various briefings and phone calls that took place in the course of the morning. Donald Rumsfeld always said that he served at the pleasure of President Bush, indicated that he would not be stepping down voluntarily. But the president said after mutual discussions with Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, it was agreed that his replacement would bring a fresh perspective to the Iraq policy. The president also today conceding that progress in Iraq has not been fast enough, and that the message sent by the American people in yesterday's elections were a clear signal that they expected more results. The president called it a thumping that the Republicans took at the polls yesterday, and he said now it is incumbent upon him to work with the Democrats to forge a way forward. And a couple of unanswered questions. We don't know exactly where Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld is at this moment, or whether he is still technically the Defense Secretary until Bob Gates is confirmed. They have not told us the effective time of his resignation.
Yeah, that was my next question, but you have answered that. It seems yesterday the president saying in his news conference that he met with the Secretary of Defense and decided that he would take his resignation, but no word yet or no sight of Donald Rumsfeld.
You know, obviously, usually when these kind of things happen, the person stays on until the next person is in place. However, there is a Deputy Defense Secretary that can take over if Rumsfeld steps away, and they may want to make a clean break. So we've asked the Pentagon for clarification on those 2 points. When exactly did Defense Secretary Rumsfeld stop being Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, and will we hear from him at all today? Presumably he is in Washington, but we haven't seen him in the building.
Jamie McIntyre, thank you, sir.
Let's get straight to Capitol Hill now. Andrea Koppel with reaction to the resignation of Donald Rumsfeld. A lot of talk that this wasn't going to happen. That's sort of what the buzz was, Andrea, at the very beginning, and that even though the Democrats were taking the majority, that it wasn't going to force Rumsfeld out. And I guess we still really haven't answered that, whether if indeed that's what led to this or not.
That's exactly right, Kira. In fact, I ran into the Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid in the hallway after we all learned the news, and I said, "Are you surprised by this?" And he said, "Well, President Bush is very stubborn, and we've been calling for this change in civilian leadership for some time." Nevertheless, despite what President Bush said during his press conference, that he doesn't necessarily think that Iraq was the force that Democrats believe it was in the election, Democrats beg to differ. We believe, they say, that they have a mandate from the American people, not just for change over a broad spectrum of issues, but specifically on Iraq. And we heard that from the Speaker-elect Nancy Pelosi this morning, who made very clear right out of the gate that she expected to see a change in the civilian leadership. Now, shortly after she made those on-camera comments, her office got a call, we're told, from Josh Bolten, the chief of staff from over at the White House, to her office saying that this move was in place. And after that, there was a press conference in which Speaker-elect Pelosi and Harry Reid were asked for their reaction.
So I welcome this change. I think it will give a fresh start to finding a solution to Iraq rather than staying the course.
If the vote of last night from all over America didn't accomplish anything but this, it was a good night. But we accomplished far more than this. And I recognize that the country is going to be well served with the new Secretary of Defense. I look forward to working with that person. But also, I look to working with the President to see if the new Secretary of Defense will help work to change course in Iraq. We have to do that.
And there's additional reaction from the man who is likely to be the next chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Ike Skelton, in a statement saying that he thinks it's critical that this change be more than just a different face on an old policy. Clearly, Kira, Democrats believe that the White House, President Bush, perhaps even Secretary Rumsfeld, saw the writing on the wall, saw that with a majority in the House, there were going to be subpoenas, there were going to be hearings, and new chairmen, obviously, of these committees, and perhaps even over in the Senate. So the red meat was thrown to the wolves, and President Bush hoping to start off with a clean slate with this new Congress, Kira.
All right, Andrea Koppel on the Hill. We'll continue to go back to you for reaction on the resignation.
Now for insight, and if anyone could offer some insight on this, it would be this next person, former Secretary of Defense William Cohen. He joins us now on the phone, and I understand, Mr. Cohen, you're in New Delhi?
That's right.
Yeah. Now, if my memory serves me right, when you were Secretary of Defense during the Clinton era, during the Clinton years, there was sort of the same reverse situation where there was a Republican House. Tell us maybe the reasoning behind why the Secretary of Defense may have made this announcement now.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the vote that took place on Tuesday was largely in response to the situation in Iraq. I think that there's little doubt in my mind and that of most people that that was the dominant factor. And I'm sure that Secretary Rumsfeld, looking into the future, would see that there's a likelihood of great contention over the continuation of the policy in Iraq. That with the possibility at that point, at least, of the House becoming the majority, and maybe even the Senate, that he would be looking forward to a lengthy interrogation during committee hearings and responding to investigations. And I think that he, in his own mind, felt that that would not serve the country well, and as he's pointed out on 2 occasions, he had offered to resign in the past. This time, given the political reality of what was taking place, I think that it was much more well received by the president under those circumstances.
So do you think that, given what you know about this, do you think that it was all his decision, or do you think that it was a mutual decision between he and the president, or the president said, hey, you know, listen, the people have spoken, so maybe it's time for you to go?
Hard to say. It could be a combination of both. This is an exhausting job to begin with. I think anyone who serves longer than 4 years really is pressing it in terms of the physical demands made by the job, the intellectual demands. I think that a 6-year term under the circumstances when you're in a major conflict, as we are in Iraq, is very draining. And I think that in combination with the reality of the president needing to have the support of Congress in moving forward probably led to a joint decision under these circumstances, but it's anyone's guess. I think it really is important to factor in the Jim Baker element here, that you now have a senior official from the Bush 41 administration working with potentially Bob Gates, who has certainly the confidence of the President Bush 41, and apparently President Bush, that he will carry out the job in really fine fashion. So,
Mr. Cohen,
I would expect
go into more detail about that for our viewers, about the Jim Baker era and what you mean by that.
Well, Jim Baker, I would expect that Jim Baker is going to come forward with a proposal that will at least alter the approach that's currently being taken, and joined with Lee Hamilton, they will present a bipartisan proposal.
Right,
that
the report that's expected out, right.
I'm sorry?
The report that's expected out soon, by the first of the year.
Yes, that report that is expected, I think, is being looked forward. All those in Capitol Hill looking forward to this report, saying this is at least an opportunity for a fresh look at how we resolve the situation and our presence in Iraq. That proposal, in combination with having a new Secretary of Defense, I think is going to give President Bush an opportunity to at least have a bipartisan consensus around that policy. Right now, he does not have it, and that would make it that much more difficult for him to go forward, and frankly, it would not be fair to our troops who are out there fighting and putting their lives on the line every day. So the combination of the Baker report, Baker-Hamilton report, and now with a proposed Bob Gates as Secretary of Defense, I think gives President Bush an opportunity to have the country and the Congress behind a policy, and which he doesn't have right now.
All right, thank you. Former Secretary of Defense William Cohen, thank you so much for joining us.
Let's get back to Baghdad. Our Anish Rahman getting reaction there. Anish, who have you had a chance to speak with? More Iraqis, U.S. military troops?
Yeah, Kira, we're getting a mix of everything. This is big news here. Donald Rumsfeld really defined this war up until today. Iraqis perhaps know him second only to President Bush. The news was carried on at least 2 major television stations here. There'll be 2 groups that are digesting this. So first, of course, the Iraqi people, among Iraqi society. For them, change will be good. I was out this morning talking to Iraqis, getting them to react to the Democratic victory in the House. For a lot of them, they only knew that the Democrats weren't Republicans. That's all they knew about the party. But they were happy that change in Washington was taking place, hopeful that that would mean there would be change in Baghdad, that the violence could somehow be stopped, that security forces could somehow stand up. They will perhaps see this as more of that change, as more rationale for why things here might now get better. Of course, then for the Iraqi political leaders, it's a whole separate thing. There'll be a lot of late-night phone calls tonight. We're trying to get in touch with as many as we can. For them, this opens up a great deal of uncertainty. American pressure has been sustained on this government. They know that the Democratic Party has talked about increased pressure on the Iraqi Prime Minister. There have been suggestions within the Democratic Party that Iraq should be partitioned into 3 segments, with the Shia, Sunni, and Kurds having essentially their own areas, with a strong central government dividing the oil revenues. So the Iraqi prime minister will now be looking to Washington to figure out what's going to come next in terms of the pressure he's going to get. And interestingly, Kira, earlier today, the U.S. ambassador to Iraq, Zalmay Khalilzad, met with Iraqi politicians trying to appease any fears they might have had after the midterm elections that dramatic change was on the way. One can only presume he was unaware that this announcement was going to come. He is now, as we understand, speaking on Iraqi television. We'll wait to see what he's saying. But among the Iraqi people, again, a sense perhaps that change of any kind is good, that it can't stay as it is. Among the politicians, a sense of uncertainty. And then, of course, you've got the U.S. troops here. Our own John Roberts is embedded with U.S. troops. He was telling us a short time ago that they don't want to publicly comment because it's a civilian change. But off camera, some of them are saying that this might be a good thing. It takes away a distraction that was Donald Rumsfeld, criticism that had been mounting within the country, and refocuses perhaps efforts. And they will now be thinking to themselves, undoubtedly, how this change is going to affect what they do on a day-to-day basis here. Increasing frustration among U.S. troops that they're getting caught in the middle of sectarian strife that started back February 22nd, that Shia mosque bombing. So they're going to be looking to see if any of what they do on the ground will start to change, Kira.
Just real quickly, Anish, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but whether it's ambassadors or members of the Iraqi government, do you know if any of them have met with Robert Gates? If confirmed by the Senate, as we know, Dr. Robert Michael Gates, former director of the CIA, will replace Donald Rumsfeld as the Secretary of Defense. He's currently the president of Texas A&M University. Do you know if he's made any trips to Iraq, if he has met with any of these leaders in Iraq?
I do not. I think that a lot of these leaders, of course, while he was in those positions, were not here. A lot of the Iraqi politicians were out of the country during the time of Saddam. I don't know if they met with him as exile groups previously, but I think they'll see him, at least the people will, and a lot of members of the government who might have had some distaste with how Donald Rumsfeld was prosecuting this war, they will see this replacement as perhaps someone more willing to relook at the strategy. But Iraqis have been, and we've seen it in a contentious relationship in the past few weeks, Iraqi leaders feeling pressure from the U.S. and eager to point out that they are the ones running this sovereign country, that they are the ones that are going to have to figure out how to make Iraq stand up on its own. And as we see the American public vote for change in Iraq, these are the public and the politicians that are affected by it. And it'll be very interesting to see now, as we have a confirmation hearing, as we have questions raised by a Democratic House, how Iraqis start to digest that and how Iraqi politicians are going to struggle with the fact that they're now caught in the middle a bit. Kira?
Anish Rahman, live from Baghdad. Thanks, Anish.
All right, we have some information just coming in. President Bush will hold a press conference with, I don't know if to call him former Secretary of Defense or Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld and the incoming Secretary of Defense Gates. That's at 3:30. Let's bring in Kathleen Koch, who's at the White House, to tell us more about this. Kathleen?
Don, the president himself hinted at this in his press conference at 1 p.m. that he would be appearing later this afternoon here at the White House with both Robert Gates, the incoming Defense Secretary, and Donald Rumsfeld. And we have now confirmed that that will be at 3:30 p.m. Assuming that will be in the Oval Office. That's generally where the president makes these sorts of appearances. And just a very, very dramatic announcement by the president this afternoon, relenting finally to these demands from both Republicans, Democrats, even his one-time Chief of Staff Andy Card, the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld stepped down. The president again making the announcement that Robert Gates, a former CIA director, would be filling his shoes. And the move came in part to meet public demand for a change, a new direction in Iraq. So that's the dramatic action that the president is taking. We've been getting some swift reaction from Democrats. The emails came pouring in fast and furious. I'll just read you a couple of quick quotes. Senator Charles Schumer saying, yesterday's election was a cry for change. For the first time, it looks like the president is listening. We'll be getting more reaction throughout the day. What you're also listening to is cries for change from protesters outside the gates, about 20 protesters led by Cindy Sheehan, anti-war press protester.
We can hear them. And you sort of touched on this, Andrea. In talking about staying the course, he said, quote, maybe I should have done a better job of explaining. Then he also went on and said, I am frustrated too. I wish we could have wish it could have gone faster. I am disappointed. I wish it had made more progress. Did you take note of the language during this press conference?
Well, it was certainly very interesting language, the president appearing more contrite, appearing to adopt some of the language that he had in the weeks before he really went out hard and fast on the campaign trail, where he was trying to make Americans understand that he got it, that he shared their frustration with the war in Iraq. So again, the president hearing the cry loud and clear from the American people for a change in Iraq.
Andrea, thank you so much. And we have that news conference again. I want to reiterate a news conference coming up with Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, and the incoming Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, and that's expected to happen at about 3:30 Eastern.
Close races, recounts, election glitches. Some decisions could come down to the courts. Our senior legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin, will weigh in on the midterms. Straight ahead.
Playbook for Parenting, a sponsored message from mvparents.com.
The success I've had on and off the field, I owe to involved parents and dedicated coaches who are always on my team. As a parent, I know raising kids isn't easy, but now there's mvparents.com. Created by Search Institute, it has the tools every parent needs to raise healthy, responsible kids. I urge you to visit mvparents.com.
Playbook for Parenting, brought to you by founding sponsor Coors Brewing Company.
Here's some great health news from Smart Balance. New delicious Smart Balance Omega Foods. Omega Plus buttery spread with natural plant sterols and omega-3 from the sea. Smart Balance Peanut Butter with 1,000 milligrams of omega-3s per serving. Omega Plus Light Mayonnaise. And Omega Cooking Oil. They give you more omega-3s with no hydrogenation and no trans fat naturally. Smart Balance Omega Foods. So important, and you're gonna love them.
For those with a passion to break through. For those who think beyond. For those who aim higher. For those who demand a secure environment. For those who don't just look left and right, but see things from a whole new perspective. We're there for you. Deutsche Bank, a passion to perform.
Tonight, a big win for Democrats. CNN breaks down your votes, plus live The View from Iraq. CNN Tonight beginning 7 Eastern.
My favorite NBA League Pass moment. Anytime LeBron James is playing.
NBA League Pass lets you follow your favorite players and teams, even if they're in one city and you're in another.
I try not to miss any of his games. Even on the road, I just watch the NBA League Pass broadband, flip over my laptop and, I can watch it right there. You want to see the stars shine? Get NBA League Pass on digital cable.
NBA League Pass on digital cable is just $199. To order, call 888-SPORTS-IN. When it comes to sports, we're on your team.
Now playing in the theater and your living room. Theater at the same time. IFC in theaters on demand. Critically acclaimed theatrical releases. Now playing in the theater and your living room at the same time. Watch Unknown, the mind-bending thriller told in reverse, starring Greg Kinnear.
You're gonna kill me anyway.
IFC in theaters, available on demand with Comcast Digital Cable.
Meet the heroes of Baghdad's Combat Hospital. CNN Saturday and Sunday night, 8 Eastern.
Closed captioning hours on CNN, sponsored in part by Oric Vacuums. Nothing gets by an Oric.
Is your vacuum as powerful as an 8-pound Oric XL? Try it risk-free for 30 days.
Lots of developing news here in the CNN newsroom. CNN projects Democrat Jon Tester is the winner in the Montana Senator race. Montana's Secretary of State has not officially declared a winner, but reports that Tester leads by more than 3,000 votes. There's one precinct outstanding with a maximum of 500 votes and 1,000 provisional ballots. Now, this brings the Senate balance of power to 50 for the Democrats, 49 for the Republicans. The only state that still hangs in the balance is Virginia, where Democratic challenger Jim Webb has a slim edge over Republican incumbent George Allen. If Democrats win in Virginia, they will be in charge of the Senate.
CNN has two more projections. Republican Rhode Island Governor Don Cinieri has, we project, held on for a second term. And on the West Coast, California voters have rejected Proposition 85. It would have required doctors to notify a parent or guardian when an unmarried girl younger than 18 sought an abortion.
All eyes on Virginia. A close vote, a potential recount, and control of the Senate at stake. We're live from Richmond. Straight ahead in the newsroom.
Plus, our top story, the resignation of Donald Rumsfeld. We expect a live statement from Bush, Rumsfeld, and Gates, the man set to replace him if confirmed by the Senate. 3:30 Eastern Time. Live coverage right here from the CNN newsroom.
CNN Newsroom. Brought to you by Head On. Head On applied directly to the forehead. Head On is available without prescription at your nearest pharmacy.
Head On applied directly to
Head On apply directly to the forehead. Head On apply. Head On. I hate your commercial, but I love your product.
Head On is available without a prescription. New from the makers of Head On. Introducing Activon. Back pain, Activon. Apply directly where it hurts. Activon Backache. In stores now. New from the makers of Head On. Introducing Activon. Arthritis pain, Activon. Apply directly where it hurts. Activon Arthritis. In stores now.
Escape to a world of vibrant color, captivating design, and luxurious style with Stainmaster Carpet. During the Stainmaster Carpet 20th anniversary celebration, experience a whole new era in style and beauty for your home. Stainmaster Carpet, always stylish, always beautiful. For a retailer near you, visit stainmaster.com.
I want to treat my osteoporosis. I want to keep my bones healthy.
I want to protect myself against fractures, especially at the hip.
I can help. Fosamax Plus D treats postmenopausal osteoporosis.
My doctor prescribed Fosamax Plus D, and she said not all treatments are the same.
Only Fosamax Plus D is approved to help prevent fractures of both the hip and spine in women with osteoporosis. Boniva is not.
Protecting my hip is important to me.
You should not use Fosamax Plus D if you have certain disorders of the esophagus, are not able to stand or sit upright for 30 minutes, have severe kidney disease, or low blood calcium. Before use, talk to your doctor if you have stomach or digestive problems and about any medications you're taking, including vitamins and supplements. It's not for vitamin D deficiency. Stop taking Fosamax Plus D and call your doctor right away if you develop new or worsening heartburn, difficult or painful swallowing, or chest pain, because these may be signs of serious upper digestive problems.
I listened. I heard.
Fosamax Plus D, the only one that protects both your hip and spine.
My name is Sunila. I'm a scientist at GSK. Imagine the challenge of combating devastating diseases that we see every day. Diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's. Now how about a pandemic that hasn't even happened yet? That's our challenge with bird flu. And that's what's led us to researching a vaccine to help prevent people from getting it. The race is on against bird flu, and our job is to give us all a head start.
GSK. To learn more, visit gsk-birdflu.com.
What a day for news. Two major events centered on Washington, but with huge implications around the world. Democrats win control of at least one House of Congress, maybe both, and now word of a shakeup at the Pentagon. Donald Rumsfeld, the second longest serving defense secretary in history, is out. A decision the president says was mutual.
Secretary Rumsfeld and I agreed that sometimes it's necessary to have a fresh perspective. And Bob Gates will bring a fresh perspective. He'll also bring great managerial experience. And I had a good talk with him on Sunday in Crawford. It took me a while to be able to sit down and visit with him, and I did. And I found him to be of like mind. He understands we're in a global war against these terrorists. He understands that defeat is not an option in Iraq. And I believe it's important that there be a fresh perspective, and so does Secretary Rumsfeld.
I submitted my resignation to President Bush twice during that period, and I told him that I felt that he ought to make the decision as to whether or not I stayed on. And he made that decision and said he did want me to stay on.
The president's choice to replace Rumsfeld is Robert Gates, CIA director under the elder President Bush in the early 90s.
He envisioned an Iraq campaign like a lightning strike, faster and lighter than any American force before it. He planned well, but many of Donald Rumsfeld's former generals and critics say he failed to devise a post-war plan and refused to acknowledge that keeping the peace would take far more troops. Here's a portion of CNN Presents documentary, Rumsfeld, Man of War.
Take out Saddam Hussein and his military, while preventing him from using the weapons of mass destruction we're told he has. Do it while preserving Iraq's infrastructure and securing its oil fields. Do it all faster and with fewer troops than anyone, especially Saddam, thought possible. That was Donald Rumsfeld's challenge. He'd win the battle, but winning the peace would be another matter. So what happened? How did we get here? Despite more than 3 years of work to rebuild and repair, write a constitution, form a government, create an Iraqi security force, insurgency and sectarian bloodletting have brought Iraq to the edge of civil war. Critics say the problem began with a war plan that, looking back, was fatally flawed.
They spent over a year working on that war plan, yet they devoted overwhelmingly, probably 90 to 95% of their energy to the 10% problem: how do I get to Baghdad? And they devoted almost no serious thought to the more important question: what do I do once I get there?
In fact, the Pentagon's post-war planning didn't begin in earnest until less than 2 months before the invasion.
Frank, we did not have a campaign plan beyond the day when we took down Saddam Hussein to win in Iraq.
Former General John Batiste commanded the 1st Infantry Division, the Army's famed Big Red One. He's emerged as one of Rumsfeld's toughest critics and called on him to resign.
We're in a real fix right now. We're there because Secretary Donald Rumsfeld ignored sound military advice, dismissed it all, and went with his plan and his plan alone.
Rumsfeld's plan was to follow the same model that had been established and was working in Afghanistan: replace the government and establish democracy.
This was Rumsfeld's concept. We're not doing the nation building big time. We're enabling them to do it, and we're encouraging other nations to come in afterwards.
Reducing troop strength fast was part of the plan from the beginning.
Showed drawing down by almost 2/3 the number of troops. I think America had about 160, 170,000 troops there when I got there, and they were going to draw down to 60,000 by September.
Heated debate over troop strength had been going on behind the scenes, but less than 1 month before the war began, it burst into public view. Army Chief of Staff General Eric Shinseki testified before Congress and was pressed on the post-war needs of Iraq. His unscripted comments reflected his opinion, but directly contradicted what the Pentagon was advertising.
Something on the order of several 100,000 soldiers are probably a figure that would be required.
Rumsfeld's relationship with Shinseki was already strained. The general's testimony got a public rebuke.
The notion that it will take several 100,000 U.S. troops to provide stability in post-Saddam Iraq are wildly off the mark.
According to generals who were there, Shinseki was called on the carpet in private as well. Word spread.
Oh, it's deplorable. Absolutely deplorable. At the Kirkuk military training base,
Former Army General Paul Eaton trained the new Iraqi military from May 2003 to June 2004. He too has called for Rumsfeld to step down. He says the Shinseki incident had a chilling effect.
we got the message, which was, if you speak up and give your best advice, and it's counter to what is coming out of the third deck E-ring, then you're going to have a problem.
And that was Rumsfeld's military.
And that is Rumsfeld's military, and that is the loyal. It's not loyalty, it's fealty that he demands.
Eaton reflects what many critics charge about Rumsfeld's management style and the decisions that come out of it. That Rumsfeld doesn't listen, doesn't like dissent, dismisses ideas that differ from his own.
A lot of the rap, TV, books, articles, you've read all these things, is that he wants to be surrounded by yes men.
Absolutely.
That would make you one of those yes men.
But that's an absolute fallacy. This man is a wrestler. He loves body contact. He loves mental body contact. He wants people to push back.
Where have you done that?
I've done it many times.
But anyone who's been in the room with Rumsfeld will tell you, you can take him on, but you better be prepared.
If you briefed him and he knew more about the subject than you, you're on a boat with no paddles.
It's a demanding management style that can be intimidating even for people who've been to war.
Were the generals tough enough? Well, some of them were and some of them weren't. If you're not willing to stand up to the Secretary of Defense and give your input and take your hits, then you shouldn't be there.
But it's a style that carries risks. John Riggs is another former Army general who's called for Rumsfeld to be replaced.
If you press the military, like the generals, so hard, they will eventually say, yes, sir, Mr. Secretary, 3 bags full, we'll take what you've given us, and we'll do the best we can with it.
All this stuff out there that Donald Rumsfeld throws people out of the office if they disagree with him.
I put the issue directly to the secretary. Can somebody come in and slam the desk and say,
You
you're
bet.
wrong?
You bet.
And you say?
I said, why? Explain it. Make your case. Let's hear it. I've got no problem with that. I've been, I've been wrong many times. I've had more people come in and do that and say, look, we've gone through this. You need to understand this. My view of this is this, your view is that. And I say, talk about it, tell me about it. And we've ended up adjusting or changing or calibrating it.
Rumsfeld's ability to adjust, to change, to calibrate would be tested because the experts and exiles he and his team were listening to told them Iraq would be easy. Saddam was weak, his army poorly led, and unpopular.
You were told you were going to be greeted as liberator.
That's absolutely true.
And you believed that.
Yeah, we believe it.
And Rumsfeld and the civilians believed that.
Yeah, that's true.
So you didn't plan for an insurgency.
That's true. And we're dead wrong.
The war in Iraq played a big role in midterm elections. This weekend, CNN goes beyond the sanitized headlines to show the frantic fight to save the lives of wounded troops inside the combat hospital. Don't miss this compelling CNN Presents this Saturday and Sunday night at 8 Eastern.
Let's get straight to Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr with more on the resignation of the Secretary of Defense. Barbara?
Well, Kara, what we now know is that the Secretary is at work today, and of course he will appear at the White House shortly with the President and Bob Gates, the man named to replace him. The Secretary is expected to stick to his schedule tomorrow and travel to Kansas for a speaking engagement that had been set some time ago. As for the transition, there's little word on that. Officials here say they're working out those details. It likely will depend on when Mr. Gates is confirmed by the Senate as the next Secretary of Defense. But a few more details about how things unfolded here in the Pentagon this morning. What we have now learned is that General Peter Pace, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, did not know about any of this until about 10 o'clock this morning when the Secretary called him and said that this was going to be announced, was going to be happening. That is the first time, we are told, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs knew that the Secretary would be stepping down. The chairman then, over the next couple of hours, placed a number of overseas phone calls to key combatant commanders in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in all of the war zones, letting them know ahead of time, very quietly, that the Secretary would be stepping down. So it was very closely held here in the Pentagon, with the top military man not even knowing until a couple of hours before that this announcement would be coming. It now remains to be seen, really, though, how the next steps unfold, when Mr. Gates' nomination goes to the new Congress, when a confirmation hearing will be held, and if and how readily Mr. Gates will be confirmed. We are told that will depend on when the Secretary Rumsfeld, has his final day in office. Kara?
A lot of people asking, too, what happens to Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld now? What does he do next? Has he ever talked about life after the position of SecDef?
You know, he really hasn't. This has been a job that, by any account, you can say he has enjoyed, that he has taken a lot of interest in. Whatever you want to say about Don Rumsfeld, he's one of the hardest working people in the United States government. He works 7 days a week, and this is a job that has really consumed him. He has grown adult children. He has grandchildren that he, of course, absolutely adores. One can only expect that he will spend some time with his family. He has a ranch in Taos, New Mexico. Of course, he is from Chicago and still has many roots in the Chicago community. So it remains to be seen possibly where he will settle down. I think a lot of people expect him to go back to his ranch in Taos, New Mexico for a while and get some relaxation time with his wife and his grandchildren. Kara?
Barbara Starr, live from the Pentagon. And we expect a live statement from the president, from Rumsfeld, and also the man that the president wants to replace Rumsfeld, Bob Gates. That's at 3:30 Eastern, and we'll have live coverage right here from the CNN newsroom.
And let's go to a man who is a former Pentagon spokesperson, Larry DeRita. He joins us now on the line. Tell us what might be happening now at the Pentagon.
Well, I think people are going to take a moment to want to understand all of the activities that are going on in the world. It's a very busy time for the Department of Defense, for Secretary Rumsfeld for sure, and so people are going to want to take a measure of exactly. There is an awful lot of change taking place in that department at the president's request and at Secretary Rumsfeld's leadership, and it's important that continue.
And serving as a spokesperson there and working along with the Secretary, you know, I asked the former Secretary of Defense this, Bill Cohen, do you think that this was all of his decision?
Well, you know, let's let all this sort itself out, and there'll be plenty of time for it to sort itself out. The president spoke on it this afternoon, and we'll see with time exactly how all this unfolded. But the fact is that this decision has now been made, and Secretary Rumsfeld has generated an enormous amount of change at the Department of Defense that will continue with his successors, and I think that's the most important thing.
Well, the president talked about what an asset he thought and a visionary he said that he thought the Secretary of Defense was, and he also talked about telling the people in Iraq, you know, don't be joyful because we want to bring you to justice. What do you think of this changing sort of the leadership in, let's just say, mid-war?
It's a difficult decision. I am certain of that. I think people with fresh eyes will look at this situation and realize there aren't an awful lot of alternatives to the course that we're on, which is to get the Iraqis' security forces ready to take over the responsibility for security in that country and to help the Iraqi government get on its feet. That's the plan that the president has proposed. That's the policy the secretary has been helping execute, and I think it will be difficult. I mean, there aren't a lot of alternatives to that approach, and I think it's important that the people who will have the chance to review that to learn quickly and then decide how they think best it should proceed.
How does this come to you? Surprise to you?
Yeah, it is, as a matter of fact.
Why so?
Because Secretary Rumsfeld's a man with an enormous amount of energy. The president has had an enormous amount of confidence in him. I don't think any of that has changed. But obviously, they've mutually determined that what has been announced is the best for the country, and that's the way it'll go.
And my partner here, Kira Phillips, posed this question, which I thought was a very good question. What happens to Donald Rumsfeld next? Has he ever talked about what he might do after becoming the Secretary of Defense?
Not with me. I think there were a lot of us who believed he'd be the Secretary of Defense for the rest of our natural lives. He's a terrifically energetic individual. He's very intellectually curious. He's a man with a lot of interests. And I'm certain that whatever he decides to do, he'll throw himself into it and enjoy the hell out of it.
Former Pentagon spokesperson Larry DeRita, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All eyes on Virginia. A close vote, a potential recount, and control of the Senate at stake. Our Brian Todd is in Richmond. He'll join us live next.
Should hire people who can understand my problem, people who have encountered my problem, and people who can fix my problem.
They would have to have a staff that speaks the language, that can be polite.
Know that I don't know what you're talking about, so put it into layman's terms for me.
Listen, and then take the appropriate action that, you know, gives me the feeling that ultimately you care.
It's not easy to figure out what your home is worth. If you're thinking about selling, housevalues.com can put it all together for you. Find out what your home is worth, free on the web at housevalues.com. That's housevalues.com.
In Africa, it's all about diamonds.
Here in smuggler.
How about soldier of fortune?
The only reason you're still alive is because you haven't told anyone where it is.
You need my help whether you like it or not.
You're gonna steal his diamond.
Now in America it's bling bling, but out here it's bling bang.
Blood Diamond, rated R, starts December 8th.
Introducing Men's Rogaine Foam, the first and only foam that regrows hair. Easy to use, dries quickly. It could be the fastest part of your routine. New Men's Rogaine Foam. Use it or lose it.
To engineer a new rewards card for a business like yours, Open from American Express rewrote the rules. We started with business-sized spending power. Enough to buy inventory, supplies, and equipment. Spending power that can grow with your business. Because businesses spend more, you deserve more. So we put no limits or expiration dates on the points you earn. And we reward you faster with accelerated bonuses that can speed you to as many as 100,000 points in just 1 year. Good for 4 domestic airline tickets or other great rewards for you, your employees, and your business. The Business Gold Rewards Card from American Express. Expanding rewards to business dimensions. That's open. How American Express serves small business. Call 800-NOW-OPEN to apply. We'll start you on your way to 100,000 points and waive the fee for 1 year.
Here's a radically simple suggestion from eLoan. If your adjustable mortgage rate keeps rising, maybe it's time to call eLoan at 1-800-TRY-ELOAN or go to eLoan.com for a fixed-rate mortgage with one low monthly payment. eLoan. Radically simple.
It is still not over in Virginia. The Senate race there is so tight, a recount is virtually certain. The Democratic challenger has declared victory, but the Republican incumbent is telling supporters to sit tight. The outcome will decide which party controls the whole Senate. CNN's Brian Todd is in Richmond. Brian?
Don, it certainly will, because with the projection by CNN that John Tester won the other Senate race in Montana, it looks like this is the race that is left to decide who will control the Senate. Now, what we can tell you is that the margin is still razor thin at this hour. James Webb, the Democratic challenger, has a lead now, according to state election officials and state Republican officials, of just over 7,000 votes. That is less than 1% of the vote total. Mr. Webb has himself come off a roller coaster evening. He was behind in the polls for much of last night. He emerges today with that very slight lead. As we said, we don't expect to hear from Mr. Webb directly today, and we have not yet heard from Senator George Allen, the Republican incumbent. He also obviously coming off a very up and down evening. And we did hear, however, from his top aide, his top advisor, Ed Gillespie, the former Republican National Committee chairman, who held a news conference a short time ago. Mr. Gillespie did not say outright that his side, that Mr. Allen's team, would request a recount, but he did talk about the canvassing that is going on right now in the states. All over the state they're doing this. They're going back over the vote. They're counting the districts, they're counting the precincts. We were told that only about 3 precincts remain outstanding. This is what Mr. Gillespie said a short time ago about what those canvasses could catch.
These canvasses often and commonly turn up mathematical mistakes and tabulation errors, juxtapositions of numbers, numbers being written in the wrong columns to attribute it to the wrong candidate, and the canvasses correct those mistakes.
But a spokesman for Mr. Webb said that they expect actually on their side to pick up some more votes during the canvassing, because they say that some of the districts that are still outstanding, the precincts, normally go Democratic. The candidate himself, in the early hours of this morning, expressed some of the same kind of confidence.
We all go out, we vote, we argue, we vote. But also, we'd like to say that the votes are in and we won.
Not just yet, because the canvassing is still going on, and they have until the 14th of the month, about 6 days from now, to finish the canvassing. The state voting officials are going all around the state canvassing for the votes. Then, on the 27th of this month, will be the certification date. That is the date on which the candidate who comes out on the losing end of this can request a recount if the margin is less than 1%. And that is expected to happen. And the candidate, presumably now George Allen, is expected to request a recount. We did speak a short time ago with the state secretary, the secretary of the State Board of Elections here in Virginia. Her name is Jean Jensen. She did confirm that a lot of canvassing is going on right now. She says she is not concerned, Don, that this will be another repeat of the Florida recount of 2000. She says the system here is much more sophisticated. They don't have any hanging chads. They don't anticipate nearly those types of problems.
CNN's Brian Todd in Richmond. Thank you.
CNN projects John Tester is the winner in the crucial Montana Senate race. If you were just with us just after noon Eastern, you heard my phone interview with the former and state Senate president, or the farmer rather, and state Senate president, in which he declared victory for the very first time. The Republican incumbent Conrad Burns has not conceded, and Democrats now are 1 seat closer to controlling the U.S. Senate. CNN's Chris Lawrence standing by now in Billings with more. Chris.
Well, Kara, I was here in this same room about 12 hours ago, and it was filled with Conrad Burns supporters. Now it's, pretty much all but empty, although we're told that one of the campaign workers from Burns' staff is going to come here within the next hour or so and release a written statement. But all in all, this day looks like it's going to belong to Jon Tester. He's the Democratic current president of the Montana State Senate and a third-generation organic farmer. Now, at times, his campaign turned nasty and negative, portraying Conrad Burns as corrupt, and in turn, Tester was portrayed as being a high taxer who was too liberal for the state of Montana. But after declaring victory live on CNN, he seemed to be staking out more of a middle ground.
Now is the time, really, though, to come together. It really is a time to put politics aside. We've got many, many issues that are facing this great state and this country, both in foreign policy and domestic policy. We've talked about them for the last 18 months. Now's the time to roll up our sleeves and get some things done. It is absolutely critically important that we change the direction of this country and empower the middle class, empower working families and small businesses, family farms and ranchers, and really the people who've made this country so great.
Now, his opponent, Senator Conrad Burns, has served the state of Montana for 18 years. And right now, he shows no signs of really giving up this fight. We're told that a representative from his campaign will hand out a written statement, but they will make no comment. And there's no plans for Conrad Burns to show up and make any sort of concession speech, which leads us to speculate in some respects that he may be considering the possibility of asking for a recount. Kira?
Follow it. Chris Lawrence, thank you.
He won't be Speaker, and now we're hearing Dennis Hastert won't seek a leadership role at all when the new Congress gathers in January. In a conference call today with fellow Republicans, Hastert bowed out of contention for House Minority Leader, though he easily won re-election from his home district in Illinois.
Every vote counts, and it's likely some states will be recounting every vote. And Campaign 2000, well, it gave us the ultimate voting glitch nightmare. Would it be fair to call Campaign 2006 son of a glitch? Our senior legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin, has more on the potential ballot battles. That's Lisa Clark. She's such a great writer, isn't she? I wish I could take credit for son of a glitch.
I'm just enjoying it sitting here, as I always enjoy whatever you say, Kate.
Oh, next time I cuss, I'll use that then. But then again, I never cuss at you. Let's get down to business. Virginia, what do you think? Could there be a recount? Will it be anything like the nightmare we saw in Florida with the hanging chads and the magnifying glasses?
Clearly, under Virginia law, Allen is entitled to a recount. The margin is less than 1%. 1% would be about 24,000 votes. The margin now is about 7,000 votes. So clearly, Allen is entitled to ask for a recount. However, very different law from Florida, very different set of circumstances. First of all, it's just a much bigger margin. 7,000 votes is far more than I have ever heard of a recount making up in any race, in any state. Also, Virginia has a very different system. Almost all their machines are electrical. They are the new modern machines with no paper trail. They're just electronic voting machines where there's nothing to recount. There is simply a number at each voting machine which is being checked right now during this part called the canvass. So last year, when there was a recount in the state attorney general's race in Virginia, it took a very long time. It went all the way to December 22nd, but it only moved 27 votes. That's why the answer to your question is yes, he's entitled to a recount, but I don't see any way he could make up 7,000 votes.
Well, and you heard Chris Lawrence also talking about the race in Montana between Conrad Burns and Jon Tester. Jon Tester came on CNN, declared victory, but Burns has still not conceded. So is it possible that we could see the same thing in Montana?
Burns is in even worse shape than Allen is because of the unique circumstances of Montana's law. Under Montana law, you can only even ask for a recount if you're behind 0.5% or less. As we see there, he's behind by about 3,000 votes. He would have to be behind by 2,000 votes in order to ask for a recount. So I don't think, as far as I understand the law, that Burns is even entitled to ask for a recount. So he's not conceding, but he may just be delaying the inevitable if these numbers hold up like that.
Now explain what happened in Colorado, because there were some issues earlier in the morning, and we reported that they were going to keep the polling stations open later into the evening, but they didn't.
Well, I mean, there is a lot of discretion available to local election officials to keep polls open or not. And in the absence of a judge's order, most election officials follow their rules and don't. But it's just another example of how, even though it looks like we haven't had a Florida-level fiasco in 2006, the system is very far from perfect. There are not enough machines. They're not staffed by knowledgeable people, and it needs a lot of work.
Legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin, thanks so much.
See you, Kira.
We're going to take a quick break. More from the CNN Newsroom straight ahead.
Tonight, a big win for Democrats. CNN breaks down your votes, plus live The View from Iraq. CNN Tonight beginning 7 Eastern.
Town & Country asks, do you know what certified pre-owned means? It means you'll save when you buy your Chrysler, Jeep, or Dodge and get the most comprehensive Daimler Chrysler factory-backed warranty. Only a 5-star dealer can offer this warranty, and TNC is your 5-star dealer. In other words, it's brand spanking used. So what are you driving? To find out about certified pre-owned vehicles, visit Town & Country Chrysler Jeep in Milwaukee and Town & Country Dodge in Wilsonville. Drive home happy.
Performance is not an option. Luxury is not an option. Gorgeous is not an option.
Lease a 2007 S-Type 3.0 for $549 a month at Monty Shelton Jaguar, 16th and West Burnside.
Bring the sparkle of the holidays home this month at the Northwest Rugs Holiday Sale. Join us as we ring in the holidays with huge discounts on our entire collection of rugs, fine furniture, and unique accessories. At Northwest Rugs, find the perfect gift this year or accessorize for the holidays. For a limited time only, Northwest Rugs' full display of designer rugs, furniture, and accessories will be on sale. Don't miss out on huge savings at the Northwest Rugs Holiday Sale. Season's greetings and savings galore. Visit Northwest Rugs, the West Coast leader in rugs.
This is what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. Hard left hand, straight on the button by Pacquiao.
Now their third explosive fight.
Talk about going into the jaws of the lion.
3 times the fury.
They're trading their money punches.
3 times the pride.
Oh my goodness, this is boxing at its best. What a fight!
Pacquiao Morales 3, Saturday, November 18th. Live on Events in Demand pay-per-view.
Order Pacquiao versus Morales 3, live November 18th on Events in Demand.
Outspoken Bill Maher on the election's winners and losers. Larry King tonight.
With unmatched technology and innovation years ahead of its time, we've pushed the boundaries of high definition and tested the limits of reality. The new Pure Vision Plasma Display, only from Pioneer.
You're looking at live pictures there of a podium. That's because Arizona Senator John McCain expected to hold a press conference soon where he will comment on the resignation of Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. We'll bring the news live when it happens right here in the CNN newsroom.
Introducing Men's Rogaine Foam, the first and only foam that regrows hair. Easy to use, dries quickly. It could be the fastest part of your routine. New Men's Rogaine Foam. Use it or lose it.
It's not easy to figure out what your home is worth. If you're thinking about selling, housevalues.com can put it all together for you. Find out what your home is worth, free on the web at housevalues.com. That's housevalues.com.
I'm Rachel Stern, and this is my story. I'm in a show right now. I lead a discussion group. I volunteer at a hospital. I have arthritis in both my ankles. If you've got pain, you can't do all the things that I do. I take a leave. That's what keeps me going, a leave, so I'm going to keep on taking it. They're going to have trouble putting the lid on me.
Are you like me? I have high blood pressure, and I have high cholesterol. Sometimes problems come in twos, but sometimes help can come in one. Catawit. Catawit contains the leading branded blood pressure medicine, Norvasc, and Lipitor, the leading branded cholesterol medicine, combined in one pill, Catawit. Catawet is one of many treatment options that I discuss with my doctor. Ask your doctor if Catawet is right for you. Along with diet and exercise, one pill doing two jobs for me. My doctor said Catawet is not for everyone. It's not for people with liver problems and women who are nursing, pregnant, or may become pregnant. To check for liver problems, you need simple blood tests. Tell your doctor about any heart problems and all other medications you are taking, or if you experience muscle pain or weakness, as they may be a sign of a rare but serious side effect. For blood pressure and cholesterol-lowering benefits, it's Catawet. One pill, two medicines. Makes sense to you? Makes sense to me. One pill, two medicines. Ask your doctor if Catawet is right for you.
Stop aging, stop dying. That's our goal.
The Fountain is an epic mind blower. 4 stars says Premier Magazine. It's daring and moving. A must-see.
Together we will live forever.
The Fountain. Rated PG-13. Starts Wednesday, November 22nd.
You're in the CNN newsroom today, and you're looking at live pictures. Phoenix, Arizona. Arizona Senator John McCain expected to hold a news conference soon where he will comment on the resignation of Secretary of Defense